Hey guys, Lalima here, and in today's video we'll see how we can load data from a CSV file into a data frame. And for this I'm using two kind of scenario. First is when you have your file into your local file system, and second is when you have a URL of that file. Okay, so in both the scenario I am using different kind of files. For example, suppose your CSV file has a comma delimiter, or if it has a different kind of delimiter, or if your file is in zip format. So different situation we'll see in this video today. So without further ado, let's start. If you see here, I'm using a Jupyter notebook. I personally prefer Jupyter notebook because here we can compare our outputs easily. So you can use any ID as per your preference. So let's first import the required libraries. Currently I'm importing only the Pandas library. If in going forward any other library required, then we import accordingly. So let's import the Pandas library, SPD. Okay, so first scenario is when you have a file in your local file system. So here if you see, I have a few files in my local desktop, and if I click in one file, you can see here this is a very basic CSV file, and here the delimiter is comma, and I'm using very small files so that we can understand the logic properly. And once you understand this basic, you can apply the same logic over a larger file. So let's first see how we can load this comma separator CSV file into a data frame. So load data from a comma delimited CSV file. So first give a data frame name. So comma delimiter CSV file, CSV data frame equal to, for that we use a command read pd. For that we use a command pd.read CSV, and inside this you need to pass the path. So this is inside my desktop, then file, and I want to use this file, so just copy it, and then you just give desktop, then files, and then that file name. So if you run this, then this file loaded into this data frame, and if you want to see the data frame, then just pass data frame.head, and here you can see your data is loaded into this data frame. Okay, now second scenario is when you have a CSV file but it using some different kind of a delimiter. So again, here I have a different file. So if you see here we have a CSV file, but instead of comma it's using double underscore as a delimiter. So let's see how we can load this file. So for that, this is a different delimiter CSV data frame, and for use the same command pd.read underscore CSV, and again you need to pass the file path. So here I'm using this file, so just copy this and dots slash desktop slash files slash that file name, and here as we know it's not using the comma separator, then you need to mention the separator, which separator is using. So for that you just call sep equal to what delimiter or separator is using. So here it's using double underscore, so just mention it and then run. So you can see this file is now loaded into this data frame, and if we see here, file is loaded. But if you see here, we are also getting a warning. Why? Because when pandas or Python parse any data, then it uses two kind of engine. One is C engine, second is Python engine. Default engine is C engine. Here we have not mentioned the engine name. So here Python using the C engine to parse this data, and C engine always use a comma separator or comma delimiter. But as we know, we are passing some different kind of delimiter. So here we need to explicitly mention the engine name to remove this warning. So for that we mention the engine equal to Python, and if we run this, then it load the data from this file into the data frame, and that warning also gone. And if we run that again, so the same result we are getting. Okay, so if you are getting any warning, then just explicitly mention the engine name. Okay, so the next scenario is when you have a CSV file but it use the multiple delimiter. So if we see here, I have one more file. It using comma, pipe, underscore, colon. So in the same file, there are multiple kind of a delimiter. Okay, so how to load data from this kind of file? So for that, you have a so for that we'll give a data frame name like multiple delimiter CSV data frame equal to, and for this we use the same command as, so just copy this command and use this file, so copy this file name and here just replace that file name. For SCP you just use a square bracket and inside that whatever delimiter it uses, just pass this. So it has comma, then pipe, then colon and underscore. Okay, so if we run this, your data are now loaded into this data frame, and if we check the data, then just pass the head and you see your data now loaded. Okay, next scenario is loading data from a zip CSV file. So if you see in my local file system, there is one file FOA database.csv which is in zip format, and if I just open it, then you can see here inside this zip folder there is only one CSV file is available. So how to load data from this type of situation? So for that, what we follow, first we unzip this folder, okay, then we open that folder, and after that we read the file or load the file. Okay, so to unzip a folder we want one more module, zip file module. So first let's import that module, import zip file. Okay, now to unzip this file, unzip CSV file equal to, you need to call the zip file module dot capital zip file, and inside that you need to pass the path of that file. Okay, so our file is this and it's inside the desktop and file, so just pass the path. So desktop / files and that file name. Okay, so once you run this, that file now unzip. Okay, second step is we want to open that folder. Okay, so to open that folder you need to pass this unzip folder, then call open, and if you see here inside this file we have a inside this folder we have a file FOA database.csv. okay, and just observe here that after FOA there is one space. Okay, so our file name is FOA space database.csv. so just pass the file name which you want to read. Okay, so after FOA there is one space, so unzip folder dot open and then pass the file name. Okay, after that after opening that folder we want to load this file into data frame. So just give the file name, so just give the data frame name zip CSV data frame equal to pd dot read underscore CSV. Inside this pass the same thing, and if we run this, we are getting one error. The error is UTF-8 codec cannot byte. Okay, so for that again we need to explicitly mention the engine name here. So inside this pd.read underscore CSV you need to pass the engine equal to Python, and if we run again, then it's loaded successfully and our data frame also created, and if we want to see the head, then this is our file. Okay, so if you have a file in your local system which is in zip format, so first unzip that folder, then open that folder, and inside that folder you will get the zip file, and then read or load that file into a data frame. Okay, so next scenario is when you have a zip file and inside that file you have multiple subdirectories. Okay, so for that, if we see again in desktop, so I have a one file 2019 election. This is a zip file, and if I open this, you can see here it has one 2019 election folder. Inside that folder again we have subfolders, and inside those folder few have files, few have again subdirectories. Okay, so in that situation, how to load files into a data frame? For that, what we'll do, first we unzip that folder. Okay, unzip folder. After that we extract all the subdirectories. Okay, after extract subdirectories. Why subdirectories, extraction of subdirectories? Because if we see in my previous example, inside that folder there was only one file, so we unzip that folder and there was only one file, so we directly loaded that file. But here inside that folder we have a subfolder or subdirectories, so first we need to extract all the directories, and after that, after extracting all the directories, we open the subdirectories, and then whatever file we want to load or read, we load into the data frame. Okay, to unzip the folder we again use the zip file module. So just give any random name, unzip subdirectory folder equal to zip file dot capital zip file, and inside that we'll pass the file path name. So this is our file, so just copy it, and it's inside the desktop, then files, and that file name. Okay, so once we run that folder now unzipped. After that, after unzipping that folder, we need to extract all the subdirectories. So for that, you just copy this unzip subdirectory folder dot extract all, and inside this you need to pass the destination folder name or the folder where you want to store all the extracted subdirectories. Okay, so suppose I'm giving the same path like the desktop/files, and inside the files I want to create one new folder 2019, and I want to store all the subdirectories detail inside that 2019 folder. Okay, if you see here, currently we don't have any 2019 folder here. Okay, so I want to create 2019 folder, and inside that folder I want to store all the subdirectories of this zip file. Okay, so when we run this, it completed. So after completion of this, if we see this 2019 folder now created, and if we go inside that, here we can see all the subdirectories of that zip folder. Okay, so after extracting subdirectories, we want to open those subdirectories and want to see whatever the files and folder each folder or subdirectories contain. Okay, so we want something this kind of structure, means here we can easily see that inside desktop there is a file, inside file there is a 2019 folder, inside 2019 there is a 2019 election folder. So this kind of structure we want. Okay, so for that, what we do, we need the destination path or destination folder. So I just copy and save as a destination equal to this. I just save this path into a destination variable, and for this destination I apply the for loop to see all the paths, all the subdirectories, and all the files. Okay, so inside the for loop we check the path, subdirectories, and files in os.walk, and inside this we pass the destination path. Okay, and whenever it gets the file, so whatever file name it has, just print those files with path name. Okay, so whatever file name it contain or it find, whatever file name, just print those file name with their respective path. Okay, so if you see here I'm using OS module, so first we need to import the OS module. So import OS, so it's working fine. Now if we run this, yes, if we run this, you can see inside desktop we have file, then 2019, then 2000 election, then this, here we have a clean folder, and inside that we have Excel file, CSV file, data file. So all available files detail now it printed here with their respective path. Okay, so what we have done, we first unzipped the folder, after that we extracted all the subdirectories, after that we saved that subdirectories into a destination folder, and then we opened that folder as well as all the subdirectories and printed the file name with their respective path. So the last part, read or load the file. So here all the files detail now printed. So whatever file you want to load, for example I want to load the CSV file, so just copy this path, and the same command which we used in the first example, means data frame equal to pd.read_csv, and here you pass the path name and just run. Okay, here we are getting the error, no such file directory or this. Okay, here if you see there is a slash, different slash, so just correct it. Okay, now if we run, so it completed, and if we open this data frame dot head, so it printed all the details. Okay, so this is the scenario when you have a zip file, and inside that zip file you have a multiple subdirectories, and inside that directories again you have a multiple files or subdirectories. Okay, so we have seen few scenario related to the local file system. Now let's move to the URL part, and in URL also whatever situation we are going to see, it's similar to the local file system. The only difference here that when you have a file in your local file system and you want to load that file into data frame, that time you need to pass the path of that file or name of that file. Okay, but if you are doing the same thing using URL, then instead of file path or file name, you need to pass the URL. Okay, so we'll understand it by doing some example. So if you see here, I'm having two URL. So let's first open this URL, and if I open into a new tab, you can see this is in a GitHub profile of LR Joshi, and I'm using his repository and this CSV file for the example purpose here. So using this URL, you can get a rough idea about the CSV file, that how many column it has, how many line it has, and this URL is actually a GitHub page URL. Okay, so using this URL, you cannot load data into a data frame. Why? Because it will consider as an HTML file. Okay, which gives you detail about from this corner to this corner. Okay, but our purpose is we want to load CSV file data, means this particular data into our data frame, not that from this corner detail to this corner detail. Okay, so whenever you have an URL and you want to load data from that URL into our data frame, then make sure that URL is a raw URL. So here you can see there is a one button raw, and if I click into this raw button and open into a new tab, you can see that this URL will give you the exact detail of that file. Okay, here you will see you will getting that file detail, that person detail, that repository detail, other tabs detail. Okay, but in raw URL you will get the exact file detail. So when pandas and Python parse this URL, it will consider as a CSV file what we have in our local file system. There is no confusion for the pandas and Python to parsing this file. Okay, so whenever you want to load data from an URL to your data frame, then make sure that URL should be a raw URL. Okay, and if you see here, I'm having one more URL here. So let's open this as well. If I open this and when I click enter, that immediately that data file downloaded. Okay, so this is also a raw URL where immediately your file getting download, and this is again this URL also a raw URL where you are getting the exact file detail. Okay, so these two URL are the correct URL. Using that we need to load our data into our data frame. Okay, so I will just copy this raw URL and we'll use this URL to load our data into our data frame. So rest other things are same like the example one. So let's create a data frame. So URL CSV data frame equal to pd.read_csv, and here instead of file path you need to pass the URL. Okay, so if I run it, then it's completed, and this file detail now loaded into this data frame. So just see the data using head, and you can see our data now loaded into our data frame. Okay, let's also see what will happen if we pass this URL. Okay, so I'm just replacing this raw URL with this normal one. So let's see what will happen if it run. So if you see, it throw an error, and this is just because we have passed the normal URL and pandas and Python considering this URL as an HTML file, not the CSV file. Okay, so that's why always make sure you should pass the raw URL if you want to load data into our data frame. So I just correct it now. Okay, now it's done. Okay, so the next scenario is that you want to load a data from an URL, and that URL has a zip CSV file. Okay, in our previous example we had the URL, but inside that URL that file was not in zip. Okay, but now you have an URL, that URL also have a file but in zip format. Okay, so if you see here again I having one URL, and if I open this in a tab, you can see this is a raw URL. Why? Because immediately that file downloaded. Okay, so this URL we can use to load data into data frame, but you can see that this file is in zip format. Okay, so how to load data from this URL? For that, let's pass the data frame name first. URL zip CSV data frame equal to pd.read_csv, and inside that you need to pass that URL name. Okay, and as we know that this has a zip file, so here you need to mention the compression, and compression it's a zip file, so inside you pass the zip. So let's see more detail about it. So just click read_csv and press shift and tab, so it will give you more detail about it. So if I go down, So you can see that inside the compression you can pass gzip, bz2, zip, xg. So whatever kind of compression it's using, that compression you need to pass. So here we know that our file using zip compression, so you just need to pass the zip. And if we run this, oh, it's throwing an error again, UTF error. So again we need to pass the engine here. So engine equal to Python. And if we run again, yes, it's successfully loaded. And if we see the data from this data frame, so just copy and use head. So our data now loaded successfully. So this is the scenario where you had the URL and that URL contained the zip CSV file. Okay, the next scenario is when you have an URL and that URL contain a zip folder, and inside that folder again you have subdirectories, and inside those subdirectories there are multiple files. Okay, it's similar like a local file system where you have a folder in your local system, but here instead of downloading that folder you are getting or you are extracting that folder directly from the URL. Okay, and why we are seeing this example, because there are some industry who has a restriction that you cannot download anything in your local file system, or you do not have access the source local system. So if you have any kind of restriction where you cannot do things in your local file system or in your desktop, in that case you can work with the URL and get output. Okay, so we'll understand it more. So if you see here I have an URL, and if I copy and open into new tab, so you see here this is again a GitHub page of Parser CBS, and I'm using his GitHub page for this example purpose. So you can see here there is a view raw and also there is a download button. So any of two URL is fine for us. So instead of left click, I do right click and just copy this link and also save it into a variable. This is our normal link and this is our raw link. Okay, so I will save this into a variable like file link. And if I run, okay, invalid syntax. Okay, we need to pass this link like a string. So under the code you need to pass that link. Okay, so now our link saved into this file link variable. Okay, so here the first step is you already got your raw link. Now you need to get the folder from that link. Okay, get folder from link or raw link. Okay, after that you need to unzip that folder. After that unzip folder, then extract all direct subdirectories and then open subdirectories, and at the last you will get the list of all the files. Then whatever file you want to read or load, that you need to load into a data frame. Okay, so if you see here from this step till last, it's same like a local file system. Okay, only the first and this raw link is different. So we'll see how we can perform this task. So for that, for getting folder from that link, I need to import one more module, which is a request module. So just import request. Okay, done. So to get the folder, suppose get folder equal to, you need to pass request dot get, and inside that you need to pass this link. Okay, so we have already saved this link into a variable, so I just pass this variable, and when you run this, your downloadable folder or zip folder now stored into this variable. Okay, now next step is we want to unzip that folder. Okay, so for that give any random name, unzip folder equal to, we again call the zip file module. So we already imported that. Now just call zip file, and inside that whatever content this folder or this variable has, we need to pass. Okay, so just copy this, and inside this you need to pass get folder dot content, and if we run this, okay, then we are getting one error, bytes object has no attribute. Okay, so here to read this content we need a input output operation or input output module. Okay, so for that let's first import the input output module. So import IO, and here inside that just call IO dot bytes IO and inside that you need to pass that folder dot content. Okay, so we run, it's completed successfully. Now the next thing is we want to extract all the subdirectories of that folder. So it's a similar like the previous example. Just copy this dot extract all, and here you need to pass some destination folder. So suppose I'm giving a desktop slash files slash any other folder name like 2019 underscore new URL. I'll give this name, and we need, okay, and if we run this, then it's completed successfully. And if we see in our local desktop, then see this new folder now created, and inside that you have all the subdirectories detail. So now next step is open subdirectories. Okay, so here again we use a for loop. So for path subdirectories files in, let me save this path into a variable, for example root equal to this path. So for path subdirectories files in os.walk, inside that pass that root, and whatever file you will get, you just take the name and print that file name with their respective path. Okay, so if we run this, you see this is same like the previous example. So here we got all the detail about our folder, their subfolder, and whatever files it has. Okay, and last step, read or load your file. So same, whatever file you want to read or load into your data frame, you just copy that file and call URL chip data frame equal to pd.read underscore csv, and just pass that path. Also just correct the slash because last time we got the error because of these slash. So just correct all the slash, and if we run, then our file loaded into this data frame. Just copy and open this data frame, and see your data now loaded into data frame. So in this video we have covered few scenario related to the CSV file, but still if you have any question or any doubt, or if you have different kind of situation or scenario, then please do comment in comment section. And if you like this video, please like, share and comment, and we'll see you in next video. Till then, bye and take care.